So this week we're kind of obsessed on this idea of personas in our software. Like instead of thinking of scenarios, we should be thinking of personas. I think Sean Lardo is one who initially brought this up with us. So shout out to Sean there.
Oh, funny name from a funny guy. Okay, I can get
So,
that. We're good. We're good.
The concept is that at an MSP, you're wearing so many different hats. You start off and you're like this 1 to 2 man MSP. It's you and Susan sitting there fixing computers and running the world. But you've got to switch into these different hats. Like today, you're the CFO of the MSP. You're going to go through and make sure all the bills are getting paid and that you're collecting revenue. This afternoon, you're going to be the CIO of the MSP, trying to figure out which stack you're going to adopt. And then tomorrow, you're going to be a engineer. You're going to go out and you're going to fix some servers. You're going to fix some PCs. And so which persona are you today? Like it's this whole idea of like code switching, like who am I standing around? Like Adam Walter, I code switch into like, okay, am I in my Star Wars persona now? Am I in my board game geek persona now? Am I in my jock persona? What persona am I using today to relate to the person in front of me?
Adam doesn't have a jock persona.
I do. You just don't ever get to see it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't see that one.
I am not a sports fan persona, but
okay.
If you want to talk about lifting techniques, you want to talk about stabilization of muscles, pistol squats, anything like that, I'm all in.
Okay, there we go. Get the right subgenre there.
We're a meathead. I am a lover of playing sports.
So. Well, and these personas, I think, are one of the things that bring a lot of people to technology. All right? I know it did me as well. So it starts with the tech, right? I love, the newness, the blinky lights, all of that. But one of the most gratifying experiences that I've been able to go through in my entire career is the opportunity to work in so many different businesses. I've, been in oil and gas and government. And, in government, I got to go really deep. There's been a law enforcement season there, and there was a fire and EMS season. And then, corporate America, times working in the legal environment. And then over here in, I guess, pharmaceutical type area, but then maybe bouncing back to healthcare. I mean, I've been in all of these different industries indirectly where I'm partnering with people and working in them. And I love that diversity, but the switching sometimes, as much as I love it, it can be just as challenging. So great example this morning, just not quite an hour ago. So we have a regular call we get on every morning, start our days. Adam and I are on that call, and I was up early this morning going at it. I've been in the depths of HubSpot configuration for hours now. And I am trying to get these workflows to go and all this stuff. I've got a chat session open with the support guys, and I'm just banging away, working on this. And Adam is asking me about CISO persona. What needs to be on that? I'm like, I'm just switching between two very different perspectives. He's asking me to think strategically, and I'm trying to figure out the unique object name we need in this HubSpot deal. And, I'm just switching between, seventh gear and reverse.
Down there in the weeds, like trying to put out the bush fire. And I'm up on the mountaintop going, okay, let's see here. Do I want to climb that peak next or that peak?
Like, just hold on a second. Yes. So switching between these is, while it's fun, it is also hard. And if we don't really understand how we're switching, we're going to create more problems. Yeah. Because if I show up to that strategic meeting and my brain is stuck in that technical configuration role, I'm going to miss the whole purpose.
Yeah. And, I think that's a fantastic point, because we get people insisting all the time that, no, I need to see tickets. I need to talk to my client about tickets. Mm-hmm. You're not wrong. It just needs to be in the right context.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
if you're walking in there and talking about budgetary items and you're looking at trying to get opportunities closed with your client, that is not the time to talk about tickets. Tickets are still important, but
Mhm.
not to that conversation. So that's your persona. That is your CIO. Your CIO does not care about tickets. They care about what ticket system you're using and how you're going to generate and process things. That is something that they want to look at once and then walk away from, so they know that when they kick off this opportunity in this project, that the workflow is just going to happen. They can make an
Mhm.
assumption. So if they don't worry about the flow and they know it's just going to happen, they can move on to the next opportunity. But if
Yep.
they're too busy managing that flow, they can't manage new opportunities. And that's that persona, that box that you're in. So when you're a smaller MSP, you're doing all these things at once, and you think that you need to like manage tickets, you need to manage your finances, you need to manage the project plans for your company, all in the same conversations because
Yeah.
they're all in your brain. No,
Yes, you
you're
need to
just
do them all,
wearing
but not all
three
at
hats.
once. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
wearing three hats, and you need to, as a leader, distinguish between these personas because those are going to be your hires someday. Someday you're going to hire somebody just like this morning. I am working on this the CISO persona,
Yep.
and I am working on our new commercial for marketing.
Mhm.
Right? That is two separate hats I have.
Absolutely.
My chief marketing officer and my COO, my chief operations officer. Two different roles. That doesn't mean I need to have those conversations at the same time. And so I should recognize when Skip is working on the technical role, he's got his engineering hat on.
Yeah.
I need to wait and switch conversations here in about half an hour. That's an important distinguishment because you sit there in these meetings with your clients and you still got your engineering hat on.
Mhm.
And so one of our ideas with the software is that we're going to create these personas, and you're going to flip into this persona and it's going to remind you, hey, there's no tickets on this dashboard. Oh, that's right.
That's
That's
right.
for our operations meeting that we'll have in 2 weeks.
Well, and there's another complexity layer to this, and it's your clients and the personas that they're operating in. So, one of the huge values of managed services and the type of, business relationship that we're in is an MSP gets to provide technical services to smaller businesses, organizations that can't afford to go out and hire an entire technical team. They hire MSPs instead. But by that very contextualized description there, we're talking about smaller businesses. And if they can't afford to go out and hire an entire technical team, then you may very well be talking to someone who can't afford to go out and hire an entire accounting team, nor an entire, admin operations team. And so you're talking to the person who is doing the same thing you are. They're wearing multiple hats. And you've got to make sure that the persona that you're engaging them with matches the persona they're operating in.
Yeah.
And, whatever it's going to take to get you two on the same page, that's really, really important, because if either one of you are on another persona, operate another persona, then you're not going to communicate the things that are valuable to that engagement. And we've got to get better at contextualizing those and managing those engagements. So we're talking about the things that are important. Because our tickets important? Yes. Our strategic and budgeting elements important? Yes. But not necessarily one talking tickets and the other one talking budgets. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my CFO, and they're like, well, we've messaged you dozens of times on this thing. Why aren't you keeping up to date on your bookkeeping? And I'm like, look at my email. Since March 10th, there have been like over 27 emails coming to me and reminding me. And there were phone calls to me like while I was in the middle of a meeting. Like, they were operating out of the context. And so it was important things that we need to do. Just, I mean, I really, really hate receipts, people. It is not, I will drag my feet on setting my receipts in. I will drag my feet on printing off statements and sending them to my CFO. I need to do it monthly. It's something that needs to be done. But to that end, I need to set up time to sit my brain into the CFO context so that I am thinking about it. Because once I'm in the context, I'm running right along. I'm answering questions. I'm putting things forth for my accountants, and I'm making sure that we're collecting from the right people, that credit cards aren't expired, and all that stuff. But if I randomly think about it, my brain does not naturally do this. So I have to set time specifically to switch my brain into CFO mode.
Absolutely.
And then I say, okay, but then like if I get distracted saying, oh, I need to take care of that month end thing, like, no, I've got other things to do. I will find something else to do. If it's in the moment, I see an email that says, you need to go do these, you need to go log into your bank and download statement activities and categorize these things. No, I don't. I will do that later. I will put that off until the end of time.
Yes.
But if I switch into my context, I'll be like, oh, let me grab those 27 emails I've gotten since March 27th and start processing them.
Yeah.
Your clients are the same way, just like Skip said. Your clients are the same way. They're working on 100 things at once. You have to give them time to switch into CIO context.
Yeah. And I think I brought this example up, I think it was just last podcast, but there is a point in a lot of teams, technical teams, when they get to usually a particular size and they've been doing support and implementation both. And then at some point they're like, wait, this is getting really, really messy. And many times, and we do it a variety of ways, but many times we break the team down and we got a group that's focused, at least, to some extent, on projects, and another team that is focused on support. And the liberating, mindset that comes with that, when you've got a technical resource you can sit down and with a reasonable expectation that they can say, all right, today I'm working on this project, and they can drop 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 hours of continuous work focused on this. They get a huge amount of work done. But you filter that back to maybe the older ways when they're working on the project, but then a ticket comes into the queue and they got to take care of that. And then they go back to the project, and then a phone call comes in and they got to go back to the project. And you realize that this project that should have taken 6 hours has now taken 14 because we're just constantly switching. It's ineffective. And so we realize that from a technical term, we need to realize that that is the exact same in our personas and our engagements with our customers. We can't be switching between all of these roles willy-nilly or whatever. We've got to be intentional about what we're going to the role that we're going to operate in. And we've had that roles matrix out there, that great little Genially animation that Danish made years ago, and it's still valid. Yeah. I think we probably ought to refresh that one for what we're doing now, because it's so cool that you look at your organization and go, all right, these are the predominant roles we have in our organization. And then we got a little button on the side, and you press that, and this chart flips, and now it's your client's side. And you go, all right, I need to line these up one to one. When we're having conversations, we need to be wearing the same personas so that I can have the best possible engagement possible with my clients.
And that's why clients are confused, I think, is that they're coming into these meetings not knowing what to talk about. Because last time you talked about tickets. Before that, you talked about this new firewall thing. Before that, you talked about how Windows 10 was end of life. They don't know what they're coming into this meeting to talk about. It's just going to be technical. And so they send in a smart person from their organization to discuss with you. That's why you don't see the CEO in the room with you. But if you say, hey, we're going to have a discussion over CIO materials on revenue, which opportunities you need to chase and we need to put in front of you this quarter or this year, and how to move the needle on your company, then the CEO is going to show up. And if you consistently deliver that persona to your client, they're going to start giving you the personas that are going to adhere to that conversation. If you talk about tickets, tasks, and firewalls, they're going to give you analysts and engineers level employees. If you're talking about revenue, profits, and visioning strategy, they're going to give you those employees as well. Like those are your C levels, your directors, your high tier managers. Those are the decision makers that are going to come into the room with you. Decision makers don't come into rooms where decisions don't need to be made.
That's true.
So
that's right.
That's why you have a persona. So if you say, "Hey, we're doing our CISO conversation on June 27th," then they say, "Oh yeah, let's get our risk officer in there."
Get the right person.
If we say, "Hey, we're going to be talking about the CIO and how to augment your business strategy on August 26th." Okay, let's get our CEO in there because he needs to know these things. And that's how it works.
And I've experienced this. I still hear it, almost weekly from our members and different people that we talk to. Getting that CEO role in the room sometimes is really, really hard. I mean, now you have some of those organizations, they're your smaller customers, and you get that individual, you get that person in the room because they come in with the office manager persona, right? That's the role they're operating in. And sometimes you can switch them over pretty easy. If you build out an agenda and you get it really, fine tuned and you stick to it. And then you have an opportunity to say, "Hey, all right, I know you do both things. We're going to take this opportunity. We're going to switch. We're going to take off one hat, put on another hat."
Yeah.
But many times we also have that CEO role that they've handed it off. There may be a little bit bigger organization and we don't get them in the room. We have a hard time. If we do get them in the room, we have a hard time getting them back in the room sometimes because they, just like you said, they showed up, they dropped in on a meeting and it was all technical. And they were like, "Hey, this is cool stuff. My team's got this. You guys, got all the bits and bytes. It seems like you know what you're doing. I don't need to be involved." And they leave. And it was really, I've got just a wonderful, example of this. I was in an engagement kind of like that. And I was talking with an organization. I was like, "Look, we really need to get some input, some CEO input on this." And so I kind of forced them to bring the CEO in. And he showed up and I could tell body language wise. I mean, there was no hostility, but I could just tell he was operating under this "why am I here" sort of deal, kind of checking the watch a little more often than not. He's sitting at the far end of the conference table. He's leaning back, he's ready to get out the door, right? He's waiting for the opportunity where he can turn to someone on his team and go, "All right, I think you got this. I got to go." Right. And I started off, and in this one of the scenarios where I was using my 2Q, where I asked questions about their business. So the first one was kind of interesting. What's your number one source of revenue? He answered that. That was kind of okay. But then I asked, what was your number one risk to that revenue? And we started diving in onto that, and everything changed. Body language changed. He sat up at the table. He moved his phone, which was right in front of him. He moved it off to the side so it wouldn't be distracting. All right. And now he's not looking at his other team anymore. He's looking at me because we're having detailed conversations. All right.
We're having important conversations.
And we shifted. All right. And now if I want to get that CEO back in the room, I can, because I set the expectation that we're going to talk about the important things of his business. Yes.
And interesting is a interesting word because you sit a network engineer in a room with a bunch of Active Directory administrators. They just kind of tune out. A bunch of Active Directory engineers in the room with a network engineer. They tune out. Yep. It's all about, are you speaking language that's relevant to the person in the room? A CEO, a CIO, CFO have different personas. They have different things they care about, which is why they argue so much. The CEO has this big vision of where the company should go. The CFO is saying, "Hey, we need to hire people to do that, and we don't have the resources to do it." the CIO is saying, hey, if you want to get to these two places, here's a technology that's going to get us there. And the CFO says, well, we don't have revenue for that because we need to hire more employees. And the CEO says, we can hire more employees if we just get to this mountaintop.
Yep.
So that's the balance. That's the argument that's happening. And they have different priorities, but they're all trying to achieve a similar goal. And so when they all get together and say, okay, what's our problem? We need more revenue. Let's solve that issue. All of a sudden, all three of them snap together and say, here's how we generate revenue. And they all have their different contexts on how they think they should do it. And whoever make the strongest case to the CEO wins. And so you as an MSP are part of that conversation. You should be in the CIO role, but you're not switching your persona from engineering, which is important. It is important to be an engineer. It is important in accounting to track receipts and manage expenses. It is important. But the CFO is going to assume that you're tracking all those things so that they can make the higher level decision of where should they shift funds and inform the CEO on what are the options that are actually available. Same thing with the CIO. They're going to assume that the engineers are doing their jobs right and that they can accomplish what's set forward in front of them so that they can say to the CEO, here is something we can accomplish by June that will result in more revenue. They can speak confidently then. But if they spend their entire time arguing about receipts or arguing about tickets, no visioning gets done and those C-levels leave the room. That's why personas are important. Because I think people get a little offended, like, oh, but my work is important. Like, yes, it is. You're a cog in the machine. You are part of the machine. If you break down, the whole thing breaks down. We acknowledge that. It doesn't mean that your priorities belong in every conversation. And the smaller shops kind of need to know this the most because their brain has all those cogs inside their brain. All those cogs are inside their brain. And you need to break those out into your personas. Where's my CFO persona? Where's my CIO persona? Where's my COO persona? Where's my engineering persona?
Right.
Where's my Star Wars persona? You know, like, how do I context switch? Like, you know, I can make a really cool Star Wars reference and then people will be like, that's not the right time to do that. You know?
Yep. And it's not that, well, it's important that you recognize these different personas, but it's also important that you recognize that you need multiple personas. All right. And because I know in technical terms, sometimes we look at that and go, I don't want to do all that boardroom stuff. I just want to get on the keyboard. I just want to do this. All right. And that may be okay, but then you're going to have to be okay with these decisions happening without your input. All right. And if you're okay with your company, your customers coming to you going, hey, I think we're going to switch over to this other cloud platform. We found a better price on it. Or, you know, we're going to redo the way, you know, we do whatever. Or we're going to find another company to support us better because they gave us a cheaper price. If you're okay dealing with these decisions that get made without your input, then you cannot operate in these personas. But I think most of us want to have some control over our lives. And so we need to engage with multiple personas.
Here are key ways you can determine if what Skip is talking about is happening. If you keep thinking, man, they're making dumb decisions, they need to do this. If that is something you utter as an engineer, you probably don't know the whole picture, and neither do they.
That's true.
And you're saying, well, I just want to work on computers. Well, you got to play both games. If you want to be in business, you got to have multiple personas. To make my Star Wars reference, there is a scene in Thrawn Ascendancy when Thrawn's very important to all you all who watch Star Wars because Ahsoka's coming out. He's the one in blue with the red eyes.
Here we go.
He is a tactician. His job is Grand Admiral of the fleet. He's very, very good at thinking tactically and outsmarting people. And then at one part in the book, he gets told, you need to start playing the politics game. He's like, I'm not a politician. I don't care what they do. Right. And they say, if you don't care, they're going to put you in bad places. It's going to be tactically disadvantaged, put you at a tactical disadvantage.
Yep.
And so Thrawn's like, okay, I'll try. And he starts, I'll play a hand. And so he starts paying attention. And then by the end of the book series, like he's outmaneuvering governors and having his fleet in the right place at the right time while they're getting backstabbed by their people, just because he nudged economies in different directions. The thing is, as engineers, you may just want to work on PCs. But if you want to have a say over what kind of environment you're working in, you gotta play the CIO game. You have to talk to the CEO. He's not just going to listen to you. You have to earn their respect.
Right.
If Alice, the CEO, is sitting there trying to run a company successfully, stressed about revenue, stressed about which direction they're going, and you come in and tell them about how Lenovo PCs are better than Dell PCs are better than, keep going down the list.
All right.
They're going to tune you out because that is so far down in the weeds. They'll give you to an employee they know is responsible, and then you two can figure it out.
Yep.
And if you want their attention, you have to speak their language. What does that person care about? And this goes for anyone at your clients. What do they care about? What is their job? If you want their attention, start speaking their language and making them the hero of your story. How are you augmenting them? Put that persona on that is going to augment them so that you both can succeed together. And that's the power of personas. And I think we're going to break this out into multiple parts here. I think next week, I'd really like to talk about that CIO persona. What does it mean to switch over to that hat? And then maybe have some guest speakers on to talk about CISO personas.
Oh, I like that.
COO personas and CFO personas. We've had these on before, but I really like to focus on how you divide up and what does it mean to be in this persona and this context with a client. How do you switch over to that box? And I think that's a great conversation to have, because I think it's overlooked so much in MSPs because you're so busy trying to be everything to everyone and you're just overwhelmed and exhausted. And this is
there's a lot of things. Yeah, there's a lot of things we don't know there. And I think just to set some of these future conversations up, the important part is you don't have to know everything. You just need to understand the direction, the important items, and the details will come in the conversations. So, in a podcast or two, if we have a CFO, in here and we're talking about being that CFO persona, don't think, oh, we're going to teach you accounting. No, we're going to teach you the important. What is it that they need to know? So that, I think that's a really important element, is we don't have to acquire this massive new skill set in an area that we don't really enjoy. All right. We just need to be able to relate to the people who many times already have the massive skill set. We just need to connect in the right ways.
Yes. Know who has the answers. You don't have to have them.
That's it.
Have the persona on with the person who's guiding or doing or strategizing. All right. I love this conversation. As always, I look forward to these podcasts every week and recording them and sharing them out. Our podcast is growing every week. Please like, subscribe, and share. I know I say that in the footer, but I hope that this series, this persona series, helps clarify some things for MSPs on why things feel so disorganized. It's because you're wearing all these hats at the same time. And if you can start code switching, if you can start switching from persona to persona, you're going to have a much easier time of it. And it's going to make a lot more sense. All right. Thanks, Skip. We'll see you next week.